This is the audio description. The video contains interviews with a number of experts connected with Harriet Tubman National Historical Park. Their names and titles will be read out in the audio description. The video includes a number of historic images of Harriet Tubman, the church she attended, other important areas to her story, and news clippings of the time. The video also includes maps of the land she owned and how it has changed over time, as well as routes along the Underground Railroad. Additional description follows. First speaker identified on screen as Judith Bryant, Harriet Tubman descendant.
I always knew we were related, but I didn't understand that she was famous.
Cultural landscape at Harriet Tubman National Historical Park, Auburn, New York. A young Harriet Tubman sits in a chair.
Harriet Tubman, as some people know her, was the Moses of her people. She was one who was willing to draw people out of their situations of slavery into a free life.
Historic place marker reading Home of Harriet Tubman, the Moses of her race, Underground Railroad Station in slavery days.
She was a self-emancipated woman who decided that slavery was not something she was going to be involved in.
Reverend Paul Carter, Harriet Tubman Home, Inc.
And that she had a right to be free and that she was going to do whatever it takes to not only become free herself, but that she was also going to make sure that her family and her family's friends were also free.
Historic drawing of enslaved people in a carriage pointing pistols at white people holding shotguns. Next speaker identified as Pauline Copes Johnson, Harriet Tubman descendant.
She was very brave. I have to give that to her. She was very brave and courageous because she was putting her life on the line every time she went north.
Map of Underground Railroad approximate routes of flight, with a dotted line moving from Philadelphia, PA to Auburn, New York, and then returning back south again.
Then she'd go back down to the south, get some more people, and bring them to freedom.
Historic drawing of enslaved people of all ages walking through the rain at night. Next speaker identified as Kimberly Sedgwick, Senior Interpretive Specialist, Harriet Tubman National Historical Park.
Harriet Tubman National Historical Park is a new national park.
Historical land map of the city of Auburn, with a plot of land outlined, marked as Tubman Farm and Harriet Tubman Home, Inc.
It's also a partnership park with Harriet Tubman Home Incorporated, a nonprofit organization that was created under the auspices of the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church.
Historic image of a group of black people standing in matching outfits and sashes in front of a building. Speaker identified as Karen Hill, President and CEO, Harriet Tubman Home, Inc.
And for 115 plus years, this church, which is the church of the descendants of slaves, they have passed the plate literally and put whatever they had into that plate to ensure that Tubman's homestead remained intact.
Black and white photo of Harriet Tubman's home fades into a current day photo of the same location.
Without the leadership and stewardship of the AME Zion Church and the Harriet Tubman Home, Inc., the nonprofit they formed, Tubman's home and farm surely would have been lost.
Next speaker identified as John Outwater, author of Cultural Landscape Report, State University of New York, College of Environmental Science and Forestry.
The Cultural Landscape Report helps our understanding of a place by really documenting in detail how the landscape developed over time, with a focus on the period that's most important to the history of the site.
The area of the park over time, starting in 1859 to 1895 to 1913 to 2016. Over time, different buildings appear and disappear, including homes, farm buildings, a brickyard, and barns. Originally, much of the land appears open or farmland. In the current map, much of the land is forested.
And it really is designed to help the park managers know what's important about that landscape to preserve and what aspects maybe that have been lost need to be recaptured again.
Those reports are, honestly, are just amazing. Information that's given to those of us on the ground, to take that information and let people know this brick was made from this ground right here.
Historic image of a group of black men in a brickyard with one white man sitting nearby.
That tree that's over there, that's part of her orchard. This ground right here, this was her vegetable garden.
branches of a large tree, a farmhouse, and outbuildings.
The Cultural Landscape Report really helped synthesize a lot of information that was known about both Harriet Tubman's own 7-acre farm and the 25-acre Home for the Aged property that's right next to it.
2 sections are marked within the current park boundary. To the north, Harriet Tubman Home property, with 2 buildings marked, Second Home for the Aged, circa 1914 to 1926, to the east, and John Brown Hall, First Home for the Aged, 1908 to 1914. To the south, Tubman Farm, with the Tubman House and barn labeled.
Harriet Tubman was very close with the William Seward family.
Map with Harriet Tubman National Historical Park marked. A line moves from the farm due north to a property labeled Seward House.
Frances Seward, William's wife, was the true abolitionist in the family. She used her home as a site on the Underground Railroad.
Present-day building with a flag flying.
She actually harbored those escaping north in her kitchen, feeding them and giving them warmth.
Harriet Tubman's kitchen with a brick fireplace, gas lamp, and other period pieces. Next speaker identified as Jeff Ludwig, Ph.D., Director of Education, Seward House Museum.
We know that the first time we can definitely pin them down at the same time is in the spring of 1859, when the family makes the offer and she accepts that she'll put $25 down for a 7-acre farm.
Black and white image of Harriet Tubman home and outbuildings.
It's quite a bold move for both parts. Harriet Tubman has to choose to trust the Seward family.
Historic newspaper clip about a $300 reward for captured runaway slaves. Article is highlighted where it lists a 27-year-old woman named Minty, Harriet Tubman's name while she was enslaved.
According to the letter of the law, Tubman remained an enslaved person and a wanted woman. So dangerous for her to sign her name to paper and announce where she was going to be to own property.
Harriet Tubman in middle age.
As far as the Fugitive Slave Act was concerned, she had no right to do this.
William Seward.
And for William Seward, who around this same time is a major party candidate for the presidency.
Room with a bust of Abraham Lincoln.
He's technically entering into a relationship with someone who's a wanted criminal, yet they do this.
And not only did she own property, but she accumulated 32 acres of property.
John Brown Hall, Home for the Aged, in 1908, with a group of elderly people sitting in front of the home.
And had a home for the aged here to take care of people, had a
Home for the Aged moved to Frame House in 1914.
An infirmary on the back end of the property, had vegetable gardens here. The people who stayed here did not have to pay, which is unique in itself. Many who could would work on the farm. And she did it not expecting anything for herself.
Harriet Tubman late in life.
I believe that Harriet Tubman attended several different churches in Auburn. By later in her life, it was really the Thompson AME Zion Church.
Black and white photos of a church.
That she supported. And then when she died in 1913, she was buried from that church. Her service was held in the church.
Harriet Tubman's coffin leaving the church after her funeral and people surrounding her gravesite.
And then she was buried at the cemetery, which was right across the street, Fort Hills Cemetery.
The cemetery where she is buried and her headstone with trinkets left behind by visitors.
The park, to be absolutely candid about it, first and foremost,
A few buildings on a grassy lawn along a road.
it is important to me because I'm an African American woman. And to be able to do this work.
Black and white photo of black people standing in front of a house. Then the same location in the late 90s with a group of people assembled and a banner reading, "Save America's Treasures."
That doesn't lift up Harriet Tubman, but it provides the grounding for African American people, for women, for freedom-seeking people.
Modern day visitors to the site.
It's just an amazing thing.
You know, and so often we think that because we were born in a free country that is just something we're supposed to have. But freedom is not free. Somewhere, somehow, someone paid the cost for our freedom.
Special thanks to John Outwater, Judith Bryant, Reverend Paul Carter, Karen Hill, Pauline Copes Johnson, Jeff Ludwig, and Kimberly Sedgwick. Director, Cinematographer and editor, Vanessa Hartzucker. Producer, Jennifer Hanna. Editor and audio describer, Christy Rugg. Music, History of Our Inner Universe by Miki Aglaganov. Footage credits, The Harriet Tubman Home, Inc., Library of Congress, Smithsonian Institution, National Museum of African American History and Culture, Genoa Historical Association, Cayuga Museum of History and Art, Auburn Gift of Judith Bryant, Pauline Copes Johnson, Vincent Ryan, and Matthew Leach, State University of New York College of Environmental Science and Forestry. Visit the links in the description below to learn more about the Harriet Tubman landscape. Olmsted Center of Landscape Preservation logo. National Park Service logo. National Park Service, U.S. Department of the Interior.